June 4th, 1982. This is Stella Wallace, and I'm going to be interviewing Sister Ellen Mary at Mount St. Mary's.
As we visited the different cemeteries in Prince Edward Island in our visits of parishes in 1972, we noticed that it was an almost universal practice that on monuments of Irish immigrants, the names of the counties from which they came were given, but seldom the name of the localities. The Daily Monument in Iona Cemetery was one exception. I suppose they never thought they'd ever face crossing the ocean again, or any of their ancestors see the places where they lived. In the case of the Cullen family, our grandfather used to sing a song that mentioned Banna's Banks. He said that was near his birthplace in Wexford County. By happy coincidence, Sister Mary Ida brought back a book she purchased at Trinity College Library, Dublin, and gave it to me. The first verse I spied was, "As down by Banna's banks I strayed one evening in May, the little birds in blithest notes made vocal every spray. They sang the little notes of love. They sang them o'er and o'er. This poem, or this song, can be sung to the air, The Heart That Wanders Through Terrace Halls. Sister Margaret Marie Devereux said her father used to sing the same song. And the River Banna is in the vicinity of New Ross, I was told, when in Ireland. And the songbook was The Songwriters of Ireland by Cullen O'Loughlin, Ochlainn, and purchased at the Three Candles, First Street, Fleet Street, Dublin. The author of this book claimed that Moore wrote songs in English to Irish airs. The music for the song of River Banna is that used for The Heart That Wanders Through Terrace Halls. The Irish women had a custom of making a curtsy in the church as the priest went around with the asperges. There was a French priest came to the parish in Hope River, Father Trudel, in 1872, and he found this custom very annoying, and he railed against it very strongly. One story my father told me was that a young man from Hope River drove to Southwest, that's what they used to call Kincora, to bring the priest to Hope River to offer Mass on Sunday. He was standing in the back of the church, and the priest himself went around at the collection box, that is in Kincora. As the priest came near the Hope River man, the stranger became panicky. He'd only a shilling, and he did not want to give it all because he wanted enough to get refreshment at the nearest tavern. So finally he decided to drop in the shilling and take out some change. But the priest hit him on the funny bone, and he had to drop the change. James Walsh settled first in Copehead and then later went to live in Elliotvale. He married Catherine O'Neill, or Nail as they used to call him. One morning in late November, Kitty said to James, "I think I'll go to Georgetown today, take in the fowl and get the supplies for the winter and for Christmas." James acquiesced and got the horse put in the cart and shafts and helped load the fowl and ducks, etc., along with the firkin of butter. I'll get the next one to read. Kitty reached Georgetown safely, did her business, and was returning home. What a fright she got when she perceived a bear was following the cart as they reached a road that ran through a piece of woodland. What to do? Good Catholic, she called on our Blessed Lady for help. She bethought of the kindle of dried codfish in her supplies. She threw one out to the road. The bear sniffed at it and then began to eat it. Kitty put the horse to the gallop, and all too soon the bear finished that fish and took after the cart. But Kitty sacrificed another fish and kept up the process until they got out of the woods. Then the bear took off. And dried codfish served with pork fat or drippings made a very much relished winter meal, as you know. A man named Bennett came to live in Elliotvale. He was not a Catholic, but he was a prodigious reader and used to go to Power's house for books. When all else was used up, he was told there was nothing left but the faith of our fathers. "Well, give it to me," said the hungry reader. This brought about his conversion to the Catholic faith. There's a good story, as I know it first, but I don't know. And this is the James Walsh family. I'll just read to you first. There were 8 girls and only one son. He died after an accidental fall from a horse he was riding. His chest was crushed and complications followed, which caused his death after about a year. As the desolate mother was knelt praying at his graveside, the parish priest said to the 50-year-old woman, "Go home, woman, and stop your crying. You'll have another son." And on April 29th, 1869, a year from that day, a son was born to her, John Joe Walsh, a longtime resident of Elliott Vale. Now then, the other sister told me the story, and she had a different slant on it. She said that Michael, the son, appeared to the mother and told her. So I don't know. Perhaps I'm putting that one down until I find out more about it. I might ask somebody else. I thought that was an awful good story, what I had in my mind, but then it kind of spoiled it when I got the different. Now, when there was in the last Pioneer, somebody up west is working, Alan McCrae. You know Alan McCrae?
He was a high school teacher of mine.
Yeah. Well, listen, now he's writing on Irish settlers of the 19th century. And that was published in the Western Graphic.
Just recently, was it?
Yeah. And apparently then he's going to continue this work. I think I met Alan McCrae somewhere. I forget now where I came across him. But you see, he gives this in Nail Pond. He doesn't, and he's a native of County Monaghan. An awful lot of them came from County Monaghan, or the cotton rise there from Wexford. So I don't know how that'll interfere with but he get them up west, I guess, first anyway.
Yeah.
But he's going to say he's going to continue it, but I think I don't know, see always where these counties where they came from, but I'd be careful in the future and that I come across, I could ask them, or you can find out. Now, there was a Father Fitzgerald that came to the Charlottetown in the early days. They were very short of priests. And Charlottetown was very poor, you know, in the country churches, like St. Andrews. Well, they had all the Scotch settlers there, and then in Rustico they had the Acadian settlers. And see, when the Acadians left, when they were all driven out by France, you knew that, did you? You know that story? Yeah. Well, they still, some of them hid in the woods, and they lived in, and they still some left, and they had lovely churches, 5 lovely churches, well fitted up. The French government fitted them up beautifully, but they buried a lot of their stuff when they had to be deported, you know. And they found, years afterwards, they found a bell in Morale, plowed up. The plow struck it and it rang, and they had that bell in Rolla Bay. They buried the things, but there are things yet buried that they didn't find.
Would they bury chalices?
Yes, everything in the can. They put them, stuffed them. They couldn't take them with them. They put their vestments and everything in the cannons, and there was one buried in Morale, but they have never found it. And Point Prim was another place, and Morale, and Rustico. And I don't know. It seemed the same. But they lost it. But they had the church in Morale, in Rustico, and up near Richmond or Grand River, they must have been one there somewhere. What they called it. There were 5 in Rolla Bay. All those places, they had churches, lovely churches, and the French government sent them beautiful things, vestments and everything. Did in Montreal too. They had see what they full of stuff they sent them. Anyhow, Charlottetown was very poor, and the Catholics there were poor and just workmen, you know, and things were later getting started there than any other part of the island. But Bishop Plessy came in 1812. He was a very diplomatic kind of a man, and he got along with the English. You know, he was very nice and polite to the English authorities, and they liked him a lot. And Bishop McCarran, I guess, did too. He was one, and they only read. Now I have found this morning. I haven't read it for a long time. I don't even know where it came from, and this thing. But it must have been. I don't know. It's very early, but. Yeah, you don't remember having that, do you? Did you have that?
No, I don't believe so.
Did I give you a call in Charlottetown? Perhaps I didn't give it to you. I don't think I did.
No, I don't think I did get one.
The list is out there on the top of that. top of that first cabinet there was a list. No, I don't think I gave it to you, because I didn't think that's good to you. No, I don't think you're shouting on that.
Oh, we did get the cathedral.
Yeah, parish, don't you ask? Yes, we did. I bet you didn't have to read it. Anyhow, this Father Fitzgerald, he was an officer and a priest, there was a Father Fitzpatrick came, and they called the priest Mister. Now, and all this started here. They called him Reverend Mister. And I don't know who wrote it, whether it's from the Burke papers or not. You never got to the college to see the Burke papers, did you?
No.
UPI. If you went to the library, they'd ask them for those Burke papers, but perhaps you wouldn't have time to read them all. But anyway, this seems to be, it doesn't seem to me like Bishop, like Father Burke's, but there's nothing that indicates where it came from, where I got it. I couldn't tell you. Anyhow, though, they got this priest, Father Fitzgerald came. He was the first, really the first pastor who took hold to do anything in Charlottetown. See, Father Fitzpatrick came, but he wasn't very satisfactory, and he didn't stay. Now, Father Fitzgerald came in 1825. Father Fitzgerald arrived in Charlotte in July 1825 and lost no time in setting about the improvement of his church, which he either enlarged or rebuilt. There was a small church by this time built on after Bishop Plessy was here in 1812. It was very small, and it faced on Great George Street, this first little church they had. So he enlarged it or improved it. See, which he either enlarged or rebuilt, so they don't even, not sure what he did. And in a subscription list where all the names of the prominent Catholics of the day were down for what in these times a considerable sum of money. This list has not been preserved, but tradition tells how Mr. Donald MacDonald of West River gave £5, Mr. John Doyle gave £5, Mr. John McCarthy gave £5, Mr. John Gainsford gave £5, and Mr. Thomas Fitzsibbon gave £2, 10 shillings. Now, the interesting thing is that these men are buried in that little cemetery. I told you about that little cemetery in the Peters Road, did I?
Yeah.
That old cemetery. Well, those men are buried there. That Edward Doyle, his monument is still there, and Donald MacDonald, and John McCarthy, and Edward Kickham. Doesn't mention Edward Kickham here, but Edward Kickham was another man who came. His name's there. Doesn't mention in this list.
Why would they be buried so far out?
Well, that little cemetery was there. It was a Catholic cemetery. That's the only one that was around in those days. There's before they had the cemetery by Birchwood School. See, there's a cemetery in town by Birchwood School. That's Catholic cemetery. And then they had the big cemetery where they are now. Well, they were buried there. I don't know. That was, I guess, the only Catholic, only cemetery around at the time. And apparently, then later on, in I don't know where, the very early, when he died, they must have been buried out in the cemetery, in the French cemetery in Port Lajoie, something like that. If they just didn't die or what they did, I don't know. But anyway, this is this cemetery. They started, and it doesn't say when they started it, but the little cemetery on the St. Peter's Road. Now, those men are buried there, and I made a list of them, and I couldn't. It just delayed me coming down. I was looking for it again. I couldn't find it. But anyhow, I can give it to you there. I have it on script down. And then they decided that cemetery was too small, a piece of land, and they sold it to the Anglicans. And the Anglicans had the lower part of the cemetery there. The Anglicans still buried. St. Peter's Church still buried down below. The top part is Catholic, and it's consecrated land. And they don't even allow them to put a road through it. But I think after 150 years they could put a road through it. And they just put a road down on the side. They got a creepy in on the side of it. But these monuments are still there, a certain number of them. And they mow it to keep this. And when I was young, it was all grown on bushes. And they told them, I remember the story that I heard about it, whether they prepared the smallpox victims there. I don't think that's true at all. And because big smallpox wasn't until 1885 or something like that.
But they kept the Catholics separated from the Anglicans, did they?
Oh yes, it's because it's consecrated ground, you see. And the line of just no fence there now is going to ditch, I guess, across just something that marks it. And one interesting thing was an Honorable A. MacDonald, he married Miss Owen, and she's buried right at the edge, as if it's just she's like him buried right next, you know. He's buried right at the edge of the ground, like the Protestant part. And they have now, like the Harrises are buried there. The Harris, the architect, and all those, that famous painter, is buried there. They have 3 monuments with crosses lying on top, just laying on top of different, you know, they still buried them there. And now the Lebanese are all buried there. There's a whole lot of Lebanese buried there now. But anyway, in this cemetery now there's an Edward Kickham and this John Doyle, and they certainly are all early settlers from that place. Now, when this Father Fitzgerald, when he came, he found the church was just very poor, and there was no place for the priest to live. And the Bishop MacDonald, he came in 1825, so Bishop McCarran was still living, and he lived in St. Andrews. There was no place for the priest. So he got busy trying to find a house for the priest to live in and to make money. And he used to go out and preach sermons and take up collection then. And it was understandable that Bishop McCarran wouldn't have much time for preaching because he was going from place to offer Mass on Sunday, and there wasn't hardly any roads. He said the only decent road there was when he came here was from Charlottetown to Copehead, and go riding horseback half the time through the woods to get to the parishes, and so he would not. And then perhaps he would preach in Gaelic for the Gaelic people, you know, that they'd understand it, but they had English people.
Was there much Gaelic still spoken there?
Oh yes, the Wisconsin settlers spoke Gaelic, and they heard confessions and everything Gaelic. An English priest wouldn't be much good to them. Then Father Fitzgerald came to town, and he was a very, what would we call it? It didn't follow the straight line rule. He meant himself very singular in some of his ways. He saw a girl, you know, he thought she wasn't dressed properly, just call her right up to the altar and tell her to pick up her pad or whatever. She was fine involved with it. I guess we'll give some stories here about that. But anyway, he started trying to make money to build a parochial house. And I copied down, this was one of the advertisements that I found one day in a gazette. That's the advertisement. I made a mistake there. That was in the paper, in the Gazette of, what was the year?
It was 1823, September of 1823.
Yeah. Well, that was the advertisement. He wanted to give this sermon, and then he wanted the affluent, and that means rich people, and the liberal come and hear the sermon and could give it. And I saw something else here about it again. He went around and preached these sermons, and I found that. I tell you, I did one day to go to the library that used to be on Prince Street, and here they had moved all the books away, and I had told Sister to come back for me in an hour's time, you know, and so I had to stay there and wait for her. So Kathleen Walsh was there, and she took me into a vacant room, a vacant office. Somebody was away that day, they were getting things cleared out, and there was an old book up on the shelf, and it was an old, like it had been through the rain or something, you know, all soaking wet, and I found that in this gazette, and a whole lot of things that I found in it that were of interest. That's 1823. If I have that right, I think that should be 83.
It would be a big event when he came, would it?
He came in 25. Yeah, and opened her down for yes, I guess that's right. Anyway, that was one of the things I found that day in the middle of the old tattered Gazette, and I copied it out. He said, at a meeting of the Roman Catholic inhabitants of Charlottetown, convened this day, the Reverend Mr. Fitzgerald in the chair, the following resolutions were agreed to. Resolved that we, the Roman Catholic inhabitants of Charlotte Parish, and I used to call it Charlotte Parish, beg leave to return to His Excellency Colonel John Reddy, Lieutenant Governor of this island, our most sincere thanks for his polite letter and donation sent us. I don't believe he was a Catholic, I'm not sure. That we feel ourselves in duty bound to return thanks to our brothers of every denomination who attended our sermon and contributed to increase our slender funds for building a parochial house for the residents of our clergy, But then we return our sincere thanks to John McGregor, Esquire, and the other gentlemen who filled the office of collectors after the sermon this day, that the above resolution be inserted in the Prince Edward Island Register. Donations received by the Reverend Mr. Fitzgerald and Mr. Donald MacDonald. Or donations received by the Reverend Mr. Fitzgerald or Mr. Donald MacDonald. Signed, A.T. Fitzgerald. Now his name is Alexander. I didn't know what his first name was first. I thought it was somebody else. This is the first record that we find of any active measure having been taken for the erection of presbytery in Charlottetown. Now, it was on that how he had lodged at Mrs. McPhee's, and he rented an estate on this belonged to the Stewart family on the southern side of the Hillsborough River, and started farming. And mind you, didn't the whole thing burn down in 1823 in October? Burned all his books and everything. He had a nephew who was kind of wild, and he was trying to get him to go into the farming. But such is discovered by the inmate, but such was the sins of flames that attained, all hopes of the house were abandoned. Of course, now entirely. It's pretty bad, eh?
Mm.
You've heard his best thanks to the, I don't know what, this is badly printed here, Minchin families for their active exertion in saving part of the product of fire. Then he came in to live in town, the property of Mrs. Thrasher, corner of Grafton and Rochford Street, where he was living when the building parochial of Charlotte Parish was concerned. Now that church, that presbytery, a parish house, was built right where the School of Nursing is now.
Right down there.
Yeah. But you know, in town, Charlottetown, when they had no telephones or telegraphs or electric wires, there was no wires to bother them, and they moved the houses around like fun, just like a snowball. See, the first hospital was built right next to the cathedral, right where the sacristy is now. But that was just a house they took over, 12-room house that they took for the hospital. They moved that down. That house now stands on the corner of Haviland and Dorchester Street. That's the first hospital, 12-bed hospital. And they moved down. They're always moving houses around. So they moved this house that this father Fitzgerald built to Lower Queen Street. Now I don't know if it's still there or not, but it was there not too awful long ago, and Mrs. Offord lived in it. I was always going to go and ask Mr. Purdy about it, but never got around to it. He'd know that old Mr. Purdy. But they moved down to Lower Queen Street, one of those old houses on Lower Queen Street. They don't know. But that was the first presbytery. What am I got there? The names. Now those are names of Irish names from Cove Head. Now I just took that off the atlas. All those people, but there hardly any of them left there now.
None of the names were carried on?
Well, a few of them. See, the farms in Cove Head were kind of light sandy soil. They didn't understand it very well. And they just grew oats and sold it. And then the good oats, you know. My grandfather was one of them. That David Landry was my grandfather. His name must be there somewhere, I guess. Michael Landry was a granduncle, and David Landry was my grandfather. But a lot of those names, now I don't know how many will be still there of these people who have head. Well, I guess there's some McGraths, or have been, and Whalens. I'm not sure they Whalens there now, but they were not so long ago. And the Radens and Powers. Now the Power is one man that is interested in Cove Head, and he lives right near the church.
The Presbyterian?
Yeah. No, to Cove Head.
Oh, Cove Head,
Church. Yeah. One of the Powers there. And James Reed, I know there's no Reeds left there now, and James Reed was married to a Reed brewer, and they moved to Boston. And these Michael Lanning was my granduncle, that's my grandfather there. They both moved to Boston. And Michael Lanning married a girl from Ireland. And her uncle had a tannery out on Lower Ropic Road. Mm-hmm. His name was Boyle. And she ran away from Ireland because her father got married the second time.
And she didn't get along too well with the stepmother?
Didn't wait to see, I guess, if she got along or not. She just left. And came in with his uncle.
It would be unusual for a young girl just to leave on her own, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I guess they put him into a court. Don't she him anyhow? But the poor thing, she married the uncle Mike, and he was not. I guess she didn't. My mother always said he was an awful tyrant, so I guess she didn't have much of a good time. But anyway, I remember coming to visit our place when I was about 10 years old or so. And at that time, she had lived 19 years in Ireland, 19 years in PEI, and 19 years in Boston. She was 57. And Doyle's, we learned some Doyle's. Then on the Stanhope Road, the McCabe's, Laura McCabe was one of them. And the Connors. Now, I think Connors was the same name as O'Connor. I think they always call them Connors out there. And now that there's a Mrs. Doyle, the Doyle's out there now and on that road. Lamphere, I don't know if it's an Irish name or not.
Lamphere?
Yeah.
I've never heard of it before.
Well, it's out there, Lamphere out there. I think perhaps it's an Irish name, I don't know. But I don't know what you could do with them, whether you could talk to that as a Mrs. Doyle. Mrs. Doyle there.
Said Mr. Powers, you said too, right?
Well, I don't know if he's there, anyone there now, but that's the name. But I think it's the same, O'Connor. Now, the Kearns, I guess they're all gone, but I know that power man is in Cokehead right next to the church. He could tell you something about the area, I guess. And Mrs. Doyle lives over near Pleasant Grove, on that road. When you go to Pleasant Grove and turn right. And what's the other one now? There's a Mrs. Morrison there. She was interested. They were talking about writing a history of their parish there, and they didn't get around. It was so stormy all winter. But the power man, I think, would be a good man to talk to if you want to go ahead. Right near the church. And it's her uncle that lives in Kensington. I gave you that name, did I?
Yeah, you gave me that name.
It's her uncle that lives there. Now, you got that thing down there? You get it on now?
Yeah.
Ready?
Uh-huh.
This is a short story. One bunch of immigrants came to Charlottetown, and one little girl, Bridget McCarville, they were carrying all their things to Kincora, and they gave her a bag with loaves of bread. And when she found it too heavy, she just threw away a loaf of bread. She didn't realize how important it was to have bread when they get there. She was Bridget McCarville. Later on, she was Mrs. Michael Mulligan. She was Henry's grandmother. I'd like to give you the names of that was in that monument, in that. I think I should try to get for you. Would you want to take any of that, or is it Father Fitzgerald?
Yeah, that would be good if we could photocopy it.
The county or something came from Ireland.
Yeah, if we're looking for almost any information we can. I was wondering, would many of the Irish settlers have spoken Gaelic when they?
No, I don't think so. You see, they weren't allowed to talk Gaelic in Ireland. The British government wouldn't allow them to talk it or write it or anything. And they wouldn't allow them to get any education. They had to get educated behind hedges, called the hedge schools.
I've heard of those, yeah.
Yeah. And when we went to Ireland, I was in Ireland just for a day. We were going to Rome, and the Sister Stanislaus was with me, and her mother was a baron. That was an Irish name that's died out now. They lived in Kelly's Cross. I don't know if we came across that name or not. And we were driving through this big, the fuchsia hedges, they grow way high up, and the roads were narrow. And she said, I can see now, she said, what they meant by hedge schools. See, they used to have those schools behind the hedges where they wouldn't see them. Oh. And they had rid of this. So therefore they didn't get very much education. That was why when they came to Charlottetown, the Irish, well, they weren't educated, they just had to, like the Italians in New York, just dig ditches or something. They had very little education, but they were very intellectual people and got education, could take it. Well, now, in our own family, the Cullens came from Wexford County, and a lot of the people lived around. In Hope River, there were Pendergast, you get that name?
Yeah.
They came from Wexford County too. And my great-grandfather's monument is still standing in Hope River Cemetery. And he came here in 1828. But a lot of them came from Wexford County. But through Kelly's Cross, most of them, I guess, came from County Monaghan. In other words, but there was a lot of rivalry between the different counties.
Oh, there was?
Oh, yeah.
I've never heard that before.
Once
they came to the island here?
Oh, yes, and it stuck it to a certain extent. Of course, in some places they were more mixed up. But see, now you'll notice, if you ever traveled, it's funny, when I was reading that, I was noticing myself putting on an Irish accent on it. And if you ever went over to get this cross, you'd find a different accent altogether,
They would carry it on.
Oh, yeah. Your name is Wallace.
Yeah, it's a Scottish name.
Yes. But you belonged up west, did you?
Yeah.
Were you related to the O'Connors some way?
I could be. Yeah. I'm not sure.
That's some of the Wallace. Look at it. George Wallace. My people, like in the River, they came from Wexford, and the Pendergasts came from Wexford County. But I noticed that the people that my family was the most friendly with, they also came from Wexford.
I never realized that they had such rivalry going.
Oh, yeah. Especially the North, they belong to the North of Ireland. The County Monaghan people. They belong to the North of Ireland. Oh, yes.
Would there be any difference in customs between them? Or
a different accent, Roman Catholics, of course, as far as the faith went. But now, those who knew Ireland well, I remember one priest who was over in China, he could tell. He was in Ireland. He was in Ireland at the time of the Eucharistic Congress, and was a priest friend with them. And if he met a man and was talking to him, or they were all over Ireland, he would tell which county he came from by the accent.
How many generations did this persist?
Well, they were right in Ireland.
The first one.
Yeah. They knew the different accent. I'll tell you a good story about that, but I don't know how to fit in. One of our sisters was in New York, and she only had a few minutes between the trains and between planes, and she was going to get a cup of coffee. And she asked the waiter for the coffee, and he took the order, and he said, "What boat did you go over on, sister?" See, he thought she had an Irish accent. She belonged to New York. And there was a man sitting there at the table, and he said, "Don't be so smart, young fellow," he said. "That's not an Irish accent. That's a Prince Edward Island accent. I know it because my mother came from there."
It still persisted that long with the accent here on the island.
Oh yes. They have a decided accent in Kincora and especially Kelly's Cross. Oh yes. But we don't have it much. I don't think we need it because we were brought up among non-Catholic people down in Bayfield, and my mother was brought up in Gofed, and all non-Catholic people where she lived. She went to school in Western Gofed, and they were all Protestant people mostly, and we didn't get much of it. I don't think we did anyhow. But my aunt Agnes said a few things, that she'd say, and my father did a few things like that he'd say it like his mother, earth, probably say, "Our Father who art in heaven, I will be done on earth. I will be done on earth." He'd say it different from what we would. A few things like that he learned from his mother, but he didn't have much of an accent. Just a few things. But Aunt Agnes Of course, she was more with her mother, and she didn't get as much as my father did among other people. She had more. I don't think we had.
Would there be any sayings, kind of?
Oh yes, our Kelly Scott was full of them. Oh yes, we had the sisters here, you know. I can not have to think about them. All kinds of sayings and superstitions, very superstitious.
What kind of superstitions?
Irish, very superstitious. Well, if a black cat crossed the road, you want to put that down here anywhere?
Yeah, it's on there, yeah.
A black cat crossed the road, that's bad luck. And actually, the sisters told him that their mother was going to the store at Cropwell. She turned back, she wouldn't go. And they had a dog on this. I had to get the superstition looked up for you. I don't remember. Oh, they had all kinds of superstitions.
Would they have any belief in forerunners?
Oh yeah, oh yes, all kinds of them.
Because I know my own family, my mother's family was strong in those tigers.
Oh yes. Yes, well I guess the Scots had some of them too. Oh yes. Of course they just said, but after the thing happened, I remember a young man died and I was teaching the man, and these people said that there was a wagon drove into the yard that night and got off the roof, was no sound.
And there was a death in the family right after?
Oh, well, not that family, it was a family nearby. Yeah. I'd have to think else before I understand. But if you go and visit Kelly's Cross, well, I'm sure you did notice the difference in the accent.
Probably, yeah.
Who was the other girl with you, Stella?
Karen Doyle.
Karen Doyle.
And there's a Paul Storty working up in King Corus.
Oh yes, he's doing that work up there.
Yeah.
Well, then, what about this? The story you see, I think, was something about them. I feel they were converts or something.
They were?
So the story's back, you know.
Yeah.
I think so. I'm not sure. But any of the Doyle now, Karen Doyle, what is her people's name?
Her mother's name?
Yeah, father's name.
Her father's name was?
Russell. No.
They used to call him Halsey, I know. I can't remember what his real name was.
Where did he belong to?
Charlottetown.
Charlottetown.
Yeah.
But they couldn't have been in Charlottetown. I mean, they must have come from the small place. These weren't the same as ours. So it was hard for them to turn over. Now, lots of people on the island here spelled Cullen C-U-L-L-I-N. We always spelled it C-U-L-L-E-N. There was one man at a business there in town. He changed it to E-N after a while. Because he said I wasn't right. But my grandfather was Landrigan. And we're some distant relative of Father Landrigan. I don't think we're very much related. But he told me that their people came to Tignish. And they carried the things off from Tignish to Sturgeon. And he went back to the county. They were from Tipperary County. And he went back to Tipperary one time. I asked him if he met any Landrigan. No, he said, he had a kind of an accent about it. He said, I met a lot of them there. He said, the names, the Lundgrens, were way down in their throats. I couldn't make out what they were saying. You never met them. And in Newfoundland, you see, the Landrigans, they speak about the two-boat Irish. Did you ever tell the two-boat Irish?
Yeah.
I told you that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the Landrigans became Lundgrens in Newfoundland. And most of them had belonged to the Salvation Army. But they're the same, it's the same name. But the Landrigans came from Tipperary County. And I had another grandmother, her people came from Cork. And two of them came from Wexford. My grandfather, Cullen, and my grandmother, Murphy, came from her people came from Wexford. And the Landrigans were from Tipperary. And the other one was from Cork. But they could tell their accents in the different counties. But a real nice, soft Irish accent is lovely, you know. I don't know where. I mean, where's it landing? I was from. She had a nice accent. I loved it myself. I guess it's something within you that rises up to it. I don't know.
Eileen Landrigan, she would be Michael Landrigan's wife?
Eileen Landrigan was my cousin of mine, married to Percy Landrigan in Charlottetown. She was a girl from Ireland that he met over there. And I think she was from Cork. And he was over in the First World War. And he came back here and he wanted her to come out here and get married because he was working in the post office. He couldn't get away very well, I guess. And her father wouldn't let him come, wouldn't let her come until he got a letter from the bishop, the governor. So finally, she got permission to come, and he let her down back.
Oh my gosh.
I loved her accent. She had a nice accent. But the person of that, I'm not very fond of the nice. It could be rough and sometimes and not good. And then all kinds of sayings, I can't think of them now. And superstitions, I don't make it some superstitions for you. One of the black cat, and that's true, that woman turned back. She wouldn't go across the road, wouldn't go on to the store.
Oh gosh.
In case something had happened.
Yeah.
So, didn't need the names. Cullen man went from St. Louis to Hope River to get married and took his groomsmen with him. And of course, it was a long drive from St. Louis to Hope River, and he went down 2 days ahead, so the horse would be well rested, obstinate to go the journey back. And behold you, the groomsman fell in love with the bride-to-be, and she likewise with him, I suppose. And anyhow, they decided they'd get married. And left the expectant groom, the bride. So he felt pretty bad about that, and anyhow, he went to the parish priest, and he said, I came down here to get married. He said, I can't go back to St. Louis. I'm ashamed to go back without a bride. He said, what am I going to do? Oh, the priest said, stay around for a while. There's lots of good girls in the parish. And stay around for a while, and then get acquainted with somebody. You'll find lots of good girls. So anyway, he was pretty kind of blue, but anyway, thought he'd make the best of it. So he stayed around, and he met people and talked to them. And one day he was driving along the road. This man working on the road. He told him a sad story, and the man said, come on home for dinner. No, I'm going home for dinner now. Come on have dinner with us. And he had an unmarried sister at the house, and she was weak enough, I guess. And anyhow, after a while, they made it up. He married the unmarried sister and took her back to St. Louis. And she lived to be 104. That's one of the Pentecosts. So that's that story. And they had quite a family. I don't remember all the names now. But anyhow, this house where Ridge Pendergast lives in St. Louis was built by the Cowens. Will Cullen, that is this woman's son. Mm-hmm. He was a businessman. This Ellen Pendergast married the Cowan.
Gosh, they're pretty sturdy people, I guess.
And that's where Ridge lives in the house. In the meantime, it was built, I believe, for Dr. Gillis, who was married to a Dorsey girl from Charlottetown, and he died just a young doctor before his first son was born. And I do see that had the house built for him, but then the Cullen had it after that. It's quite a tragedy. He died. I don't know what happened. It was pneumonia or what it was, but he died very suddenly anyhow, before his first son was born. She was a Dorsey. Now there's another Irish name that's pretty well extinct in Charlottetown anyhow. Ridge Pendergast had a book. It was a directory in Charlottetown. There's another family in Charlottetown that I should mention to you. It was the Hugh Monaghan's family in Charlottetown. He was supposed to be quite a well-off man, and he had his daughter was married. He had 2 sons. They weren't much good at it. They didn't make much of their life. But anyhow, this one daughter, Mary Ann Monaghan, and she got a lot of money. And she gave the money to buy our property here around St. Mary's. Gave the bishop $11,000 to buy the property. She was Hugh Monaghan's. And I guess he came from County Monaghan, I suppose, from Ireland.
When was that? When was this?
This property was bought in 1920. But Hugh, I have his biography, I guess. There were a lot of Nolan Conley. He was another Irishman too. Did you read anything about him?
Oh, yeah, I've heard about him.
And he became quite wealthy too. He owned half the royalty one time. The land of the cemetery is ever so much land there. Land farmers. No, now he got hold of so much land that he did.